Since Russia's war with Ukraine began, there have been numerous reports of shocking atrocities, including the torture, abuse, and murder of innocent people, as well as the destruction of civilian infrastructure like schools, hospitals, and homes. After committing these horrific deeds, many Russian commanders have since fled the country, hiding out in seemingly safer areas back in their homelands and hoping to live out long and comfortable lives. But despite what they might think, nowhere is safe for Russia's war criminals. Ukraine is systematically hunting them down and eliminating them one by one, using cutting-edge intelligence technology and elite covert operatives to deliver justice and retribution for the countless innocent souls who suffered at these criminals' hands. Criminals like Stanislav Rzycki. On July 14, 2022, Rzycki was reportedly in command of a Russian Black Sea Fleet Kilo-class submarine when it launched 5 Caliber cruise missiles at the city of Vinnytsia in the west-central Ukraine. 2 of the missiles were shot down, but 3 struck their targets, wreaking total destruction across the city center. A Soviet-era concert hall, the House of Officers, was struck, along with several civilian buildings, including a medical center, offices, stores, and residential properties. At least 23 people were confirmed to have been killed in the strike, including 3 children, with over 200 others injured, making it one of the deadliest tragedies of the early stages of the war. One of the victims, Lisa Dmitrieva, was just 4 years old. Born with Down syndrome, she and her mother were on their way home after a speech therapy session when the missile struck. Images of Lisa's bloodied stroller spread across the internet, a powerful and heartbreaking sign of the loss of Ukrainian life and a symbol of the callous, evil nature of those that would order and execute such a heinous attack. This was not a military attack. The people killed were not soldiers. They posed zero threat to Russia. They were innocent civilians just trying to go about their lives. But because of men like Captain Second-Rank Stanislav Rzycki, those lives came to an abrupt, unexpected end far too soon. And while Ukraine wept, Russia celebrated. Rzycki was promoted to deputy commander of the 4th Independent Submarine Brigade. From there, he perhaps expected to rise further up the ranks or leave the military, somehow believing that he had made a fair and just contribution to the cause and that his horrendous actions were justified. But Ukraine was watching. No sooner had the attack taken place than Ukrainian intelligence operatives got to work, identifying Rzycki as one of the main men behind the strikes and keeping tabs on him in the weeks and months to follow. They weren't able to strike back and take him out right away, but they knew that if they were patient, eventually an opportunity for vengeance would present itself. That opportunity finally arrived almost a year after the attack took place, on July 10, 2023. It was a wet and foggy morning, but instead of staying inside, Rzycki decided to step out for a jog, blissfully unaware that it was the last exercise he'd ever have. Because, unknown to Rzycki, Ukraine's main Directorate of Intelligence, GUR operatives, had been tracking him for some time. They'd hacked into data from the running app he used to log his daily jogs. They knew his routine and what routes he tended to take. From there, all they had to do was activate a local asset, equip him with a Marakov pistol, fitted with a suppressor, and tell him exactly where to go and at what time to ambush the Russian war criminal and eliminate him once and for all. The asset followed his instructions, setting a trap at a nearby sports complex. As Rzycki ran around the bend on his jogging route, the assassin emerged, firing 7 rounds at close range into the Russian's body. The suppressors silenced the sound of the shots, and the rainy conditions meant that there were no witnesses around, giving the agent time to escape. Rzycki's body wasn't found for hours. By then, those involved in the attack had been safely exfiltrated. But Ukraine's quest for revenge still wasn't enough. A couple of months after Rzycki's termination, on September 13, 2023, Ukraine launched a Storm Shadow missile strike on one of Russia's Kilo-class submarines, the Rostov-on-Don. This wasn't believed to be the same sub that was used in the Vinnytsia attack, but it was almost identical, possessing the same kind of Caliber-class missiles and capable of the same sort of damage and destruction. The Storm Shadow struck the sub twice, while it was based at the occupied port of Sevastopol in Crimea. Flames and smoke filled the air, with reports of extensive damage to the submarine's exterior. It was so badly damaged that it had to be towed to a dry dock for repairs. Those repairs ultimately proved pointless, as less than a year later, Ukrainian forces struck the Rostov-on-Don once again, using drones and missiles to reportedly sink the submarine, dealing a massive blow to the Black Sea Fleet in the process. But Ukraine's campaign of revenge doesn't end there. Major Oleg Stegachev was another Russian war criminal to feel Kyiv's wrath. Right from the outset of the war, the Russian Air Force began a destructive missile campaign against Ukrainian towns and cities. Time and again, headlines were dominated by reports of Tu-95 strategic bombers operating out of air bases like Engels and Ukrainka, launching dozens upon dozens of Kh-101 and Kh-555 missiles at civilian buildings, from schools to hospitals and homes. Power stations, as well as water and heat infrastructure, were also targeted, leading to widespread blackouts and hundreds of civilian deaths during the cold winter months. Again, the purpose of these attacks was nothing to do with weakening the Ukrainian armed forces or striking at military locations. It was purely about terrorizing innocent people, spreading death and fear among the population in a horrific attempt to break the country's morale and force it to capitulate. Major Oleg Stegachev was one of the Tu-95 pilots operating out of Engels 2 Air Base. He carried out numerous missile strikes against Ukrainian civilians, but Ukraine had no intention of letting him get away with it. GUR agents hacked into Russian Air Force databases, extracting data about dozens of Engels 2 personnel, including Stegachev. From there, they established local surveillance operations, monitoring the major's routine with particular attention paid to his daily commute. Then, when the time was right, Ukraine's operatives struck. On the evening of February 3, 2024, Stegachev stepped out of his apartment building for the final time. When he walked to his car, a Ukrainian operative emerged from the shadows of the parking lot, a silenced pistol in his hand. The major was shot several times. His assassin vanished into the night, and the GUR issued a stark warning online, letting the remaining Russian war criminals know that they too could expect to suffer a similar fate. We know your names, addresses, car plates, routes and habits. This all happened in Russia's Saratov Oblast, 300 miles from the Ukrainian border. It proved that even deep behind enemy lines, in places that might seem perfectly safe, Russia's murderous commanders always had to have one eye over their shoulder. Another name on Kyiv's hit list was Russian Colonel Sergei Yevseukov. Yevseukov was the commandant of the Olenivka POW camp, southwest of the occupied city of Donetsk, where many Ukrainian prisoners were taken after the fall of Mariupol in May 2022. International law, particularly the Geneva Convention, dictates that prisoners of war must be treated humanely and that their basic needs should be met, like food, shelter and medical care. They should, in a nutshell, be treated humanely until such time as they can be released and repatriated when the conflict comes to an end. Colonel Yevseukov did not follow that law. Reports link the colonel to the starvation and mistreatment of hundreds of Ukrainian prisoners, which is bad enough. But on July 29, 2022, those unfortunate souls suffered a far worse fate. A rocket reportedly struck part of the camp where 193 prisoners were housed. 30 were killed instantly, and the lives of the rest were put at great risk when a large fire broke out in the aftermath. Dozens burned, others died from smoke inhalation, with around 1/3 of the camp's population reportedly either killed or wounded, either in the initial blast or the blaze that followed. Russian officers like Yevseukov refused to help. They stood back and watched the barracks burn from a safe distance for a period of several hours, with medical aid only provided at 5 a.m. the following morning. By that point, over 50 prisoners were dead and around 130 were critically wounded. Russian officials also refused to allow investigators to visit the site of the atrocity. It also claimed that Ukraine was responsible for the attack, suggesting that Kyiv had staged the strike on its own POWs to prevent them defecting to the Russian ranks. UN and ICC investigations, however, refuted Russia's claims, concluding that Moscow had deliberately executed the prisoners. It was a heinous crime, and one that Ukraine would neither forget nor forgive. On December 9, 2024, Yevseukov was serving once more as a camp commandant in Donetsk city. He climbed aboard his white Toyota Land Cruiser for a drive, but would never arrive at his destination. With the help of a local partisan network, Ukrainians' intelligence services had gained access to that very vehicle the night before. They had installed an explosive device beneath the driver's seat, And once Yevseyukov had started his car and driven a short distance, the device detonated. He was killed instantly, while those that masterminded his assassination once more disappeared without a trace. Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov suffered a similar fate. He was Russia's chief of radiation, chemical, and biological defense forces, and since 2022, Russia has conducted close to 5,000 documented chemical attacks against both Ukrainian soldiers and civilians. One of the chemicals used under Kirillov's command was chloropikrin, which was used by German forces during World War I and can cause irritation of the lungs, eyes and skin, along with other symptoms such as vomiting, nausea and diarrhea. Its use in warfare has been banned for years by the Chemical Weapons Convention, which Russia signed, and it's listed as a choking agent by the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. None of that was enough to stop Kirillov signing off on chloropikrin attacks, leading to severe injuries to over 2,000 Ukrainian soldiers. Several were also reportedly killed in toxic gas attacks. But Kirillov would eventually pay the price for his crimes. On December 16, 2024, Ukraine formally charged the lieutenant general with conducting prohibited chemical warfare. A day later, Ukrainian agents infiltrated a residential area in Moscow, parking an explosive-rigged electric scooter in front of Kirillov's luxury apartment building. The explosive in question was a Soviet-era OZM-72 anti-personnel mine, capable of launching a 300-gram explosive charge several feet into the air. Upon detonating, the mine sent approximately 2,400 steel fragments in every direction. Kirillov had no chance of survival. Once he exited the building and got close to the scooter, the mine was remotely detonated, nearby windows shattered, while Kirillov and his aide were killed in the blink of an eye. The next victim of Kyiv's revenge trail, Lieutenant Colonel Veniamin Mazerin, was involved in perhaps the worst war crime of the entire conflict so far, the Bucha massacre. It came only weeks into the war, in March 2022, when Russian forces entered and occupied the city of Bucha, not too far west of the country's capital, Kyiv. During their time in that city, the Russians were responsible for some of the most heinous atrocities imaginable. Reports emerge of hundreds of citizens, including women and children, being killed in the streets, abused, tied up, beaten, raped, executed and tortured. Bodies lined the streets and were found stashed in basements, and Lieutenant Colonel Mazerin were one of those responsible. He was deputy commander of a military police unit proven to have been in the area at the time of the massacre. His name, and the names of dozens more who participated in the needless and brutal slaughter of civilians, were swiftly added to the Ukraine's hit list, but GUR operatives had to wait several years to enact their revenge. Indeed, Mazerin likely thought he'd managed to evade Ukraine's vengeance, and he relocated to the Kemerovo region in southwest Siberia, hundreds of miles from the Ukrainian border. But Ukraine never stopped tracking him, and on October 25, 2025, they got the chance they'd been waiting for. They found where Mazerin was living and seized an opportunity to plant an explosive on his vehicle. The next morning, when he climbed into his car and began his daily commute to work, Mazerin had no idea he'd never ever return home. His final moments were captured on camera and shared online, and in that dramatic footage, we see a Ukrainian agent push the button to end Mazerin's life, detonating the explosive and blowing his car to bits. Admiral Viktor Sokolov also felt the full force of Ukraine's insatiable thirst for revenge. He was one of the officers in charge during 2022 and 2023, when Russia's Black Sea Fleet carried out repeated missile strikes on Ukrainian coastal cities like Odessa and Mykolaiv. The Navy also used warships to enforce an illegal blockade of Ukraine's merchant and grain ships, threatening to starve the local population, and Sokolov was a leading figure behind these cruel campaigns, orchestrating what essentially amounted to terrorist attacks from his Sevastopol HQ. But Ukrainian operatives were watching and waiting once more. Patiently, they made their moves against the admiral, penetrating his command and commencing monitoring of his communications with the help of local partisan networks. They gathered data, learning the admiral's movements, routines, and meetings. By the end of the summer of 2023, they knew that Sokolov would be in attendance, along with several other high-ranking Russian figures, at a senior staff conference set to be held on September 22. On that exact date, Ukraine launched its attack. 10 Storm Shadow missiles were reportedly launched at the conference location, traveling at high speeds and low altitudes to evade air defenses. Several struck their target, killing multiple senior officers, most likely including Sokolov. His death has not been officially confirmed, and Russian officials have claimed that he's still alive and well, yet he hasn't been seen in public since that day. Even the most high-profile of Russia's war criminals and commanders are not safe from Ukraine's attacks. This was proven in May 2022, when Kyiv's forces planned and executed an attack that only narrowly failed to eliminate General Valery Gerasimov himself, the chief of the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces. At the time, Russian forces were occupying the Ukrainian city of Izium and had transformed it into a large logistics hub, taking advantage of the city's strategic location to establish supply lines and launch assaults on surrounding towns and villages. In a rare frontline appearance, Gerasimov decided to visit the city and inspect its operations with his own eyes. Little did he know that he was putting his life on the line in the process, as Ukraine's intelligence agents had intercepted data and knew all about the general's arrival. They even started to plan a massive strike that had the potential to take out Gerasimov and cut the head off the Russian snake once and for all. The general had scheduled a meeting at a local school that had been transformed into a temporary headquarters. Over 40 senior officers were in attendance at that meeting, including majors, colonels, and brigadier generals. It was the perfect time to strike. Kyiv's operatives organized their artillery and unleashed a barrage of howitzer rounds and guided munitions at Izium, just as Gerasimov was getting ready to leave. The structure was destroyed, along with approximately 200 Russian troops and at least one major general, Andrei Simonov. Gerasimov lived to fight another day, but the fact remains that Ukraine was just seconds away from eliminating Russia's most senior-ranking officer. And while Gerasimov may have made it out alive, the same cannot be said for Russian Vice Admiral Andrei Pally, the former deputy commander of the Black Sea Fleet, who was killed mere days into the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in March 2022. Days before his death, Pally had overseen the bombing of a maternity hospital and other civilian infrastructure in the assault on Mariupol. An investigation by Human Rights Watch into those events found that over 8,000 Ukrainian civilians had perished as a result of Russia's attacks and forced starvation, while other sources put the death count much higher at more than 25,000 people. Pally played a big part in that. Despite being born in Kyiv, he turned his back on his countrymen. It was a decision that would cost him his life. On March 20, 2022, Pally was visiting Mariupol, inspecting forward positions. GUR operatives located his convoy and tracked its movements. No sooner had Pally stepped out of his armored vehicle than a loud sound rang out in the distance. It was the sound of a sniper rifle, firing a single 7.62mm round with peerless precision right into Pally's heart. He was killed instantly, becoming one of the first of many Russian murderers, abusers, and other war criminals to have fallen at the hands of Kyiv's elite intelligence agents and covert operatives. Many more still remain, but there's no doubt that some, if not all, will eventually fall at the hands of Kyiv's operatives. One by one, they'll be tracked down and taken out, and it's clear to see that Ukraine's intelligence agencies will not rest until every name on their hit list is crossed off. Whether it's by a sniper rifle, a silenced pistol, or an improvised explosive device, these cold-hearted criminals will see their lives cut short, and the countless people they hurt and killed will at least have some sliver of retribution. The only question left is, who's next? Now, you can learn even more about one of the stories discussed earlier on, the assassination of Veniamin Mazerin, in this detailed video, breaking down the incredible intelligence operation that led to his untimely demise. Alternatively, check out this video for a look at the long list of other generals and commanding officers Ukraine has eliminated over the course of the war so far, leaving numerous Russian brigades weakened and confused. And for more insights, breaking news and military analysis you won't want to miss, make sure to subscribe to our channel today.